For my purposes here, I'm going to summarize masculinity as strong, confident, assertive, dominant. That seems like a good enough working definition. From there, we can recognize different subtypes or archetypes of masculinity. There's surely many different ways that one could slice it, but there's one particular spectrum that stands out to me, which for a lack of better terms, I have come to refer to as the suave and the savage. The savage masculine is refined, intelligent, sophisticated, gentlemanly. He's well-spoken and cultured, a debonair. But he's still masculine, of course. He's still strong, confident, assertive, and dominant. The savage masculine is more primal, more vigorous, and brash. He's aggressive, he's unfiltered, he acts on his instincts, animalistic, like a caveman. And of course, likewise, he's still masculine. Not everybody fits perfectly into one or the other camp, but I think that most men are clearly more one or more the other, and most people who are attracted to men have a preference. In my experience, the following observation holds true. The more a girl is kinda nerdy and into anime, the more likely she is to prefer suave masculinity. The more normie-core she is, the more she's into golden retrievers, pepperoni pizza, and reruns of The Office, the less likely she is to prefer suave masculinity. If this sounds weirdly specific, it's because it is. I see this spectrum in many places, including people I know in real life. Often when watching a show or movie, there will be two different guys who are both masculine, but in different ways, and it's frameable using something like this, where it's like the show is giving us a choice, like, ooh, do you like this more suave masculine character or this more savage masculine character? And you can choose which one you prefer. Just as a completely random example, I was recently watching a show called Fate Zero, where there were two characters called Lancer and Ryder, who embodied the two types of masculinity perfectly. Another place where I often see this is in vampires and werewolves. Series that have vampires usually feature werewolves and vice versa, and this is a perfect stage for writers to play with the dynamics of the suave and the savage. The werewolf and the vampire are both powerful, sexy creatures. They're both masculine, and they're killers. They're assertive and controlling. They represent an alluring other. But then vampires also have this tendency of being more fancy. They wear fancy clothes, and they drink from a wine glass in their big palace. Werewolves, meanwhile, are more primordial and raw. They run around in the woods. They literally lose control of themselves in the moonlight. Their instincts take over, like a man becoming uncontrollable with lust. I think for many people, taking a glance at the Twilight series back when it was popular and seeing the way that people argued about Jacob and Edward, it was a little confusing because they're both just kinda young white guys who look similar. What's the big deal? But what was really playing out in the Team Edward versus Team Jacob thing was a difference in preference between the more suave vampire Edward and the more savage werewolf Jacob. I think there is something interesting happening psychologically when women find themselves attracted to monsters, which is the catch-all term that I'm going to use for anything non-human, such as werewolves and vampires. I think there's a submissive tendency that can be cast from the individual level onto a group dynamic, going from you dominate me to your group dominates my group. In the case of a vampire or werewolf, I guess the group is all of humanity. It's happening at a species level. Strangely, and perhaps uncomfortably to talk about, this happened probably deep in human history, or pre-history I guess, where whenever one tribe of humans conquered the other, what do you think happened to all the women in the village? It's gruesome, but the best survival strategy would have been to shrug and accept that you're just part of the other group now. Have you ever seen that Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where Larry dates a Palestinian woman, and then while they're having sex she unexpectedly says, "Fuck me, you Jew bastard, fuck me like Israel fucks my people"? It's an inescapable part of humanity, despite our desire to look away. People don't just think of themselves as individuals, we also see each other as members of groups. And sometimes your group getting dominated is sexy the same way that you as an individual getting dominated can be. Edward and Jacob were played by Robert Pattinson and Taylor Lautner, who are both attractive guys, but there's more to it than that. Their sex appeal was amplified by the fact that they're a different species, and one that's dangerous to humans. It wasn't just about getting dominated by an attractive man, it was about your humanity getting dominated by a non-human other. And with vampires, there's an extra dynamic where not only do they dominate you, but they convert you. They make you into one of them. And how do they do it? They bite you. They bite you and they suck your blood. It's so intimate and easy to sexualize. Another spectrum like this comes from the Greek gods Apollo and Dionysus. Apollo was the god of order, logic, and higher thinking, while Dionysus was the god of festivals, chaos, wine, and dance. This kind of gives shape to the concepts of Apollonian to mean things that are structured, stable, conventional, disciplined, and Dionysian to mean things that are more passionate, wild, spontaneous, and free. I interpret this as yet another personality axis, which some people have historically taken to correlate with masculine and feminine. Can you guess which one was which? Apparently they thought that men were more Apollonian and women were more Dionysian, but I don't think I agree with that. I feel like there's men and women of both sorts. For an example of this, we could look at Sherlock Holmes and his brother Mycroft, especially from the BBC Sherlock series. Sherlock works alone and is quick on his feet. He's emotional, impulsive, wild. Mycroft, on the other hand, is the more measured man of the institution. Kirk and Picard from Star Trek, I kind of see this distinction in. While they're not from the same series, they're often compared because they're the two most famous starship captains, and while they have similar traits, given they're both Starfleet captains, Kirk is comparatively the more daring rogue or risk-taker, while Picard is more of a refined diplomat. But in this comparison, you can really see that it's all relative, or that it's about contrast, because in comparison with other characters, one could argue that Kirk is an Apollonian figure because he's part of Starfleet, but he has a more independent personality, attitude, or approach than other Starfleet captains. And although I think of Picard as being a refined diplomat, he's also more of a daring risk-taker than other characters, which is why he's in command and is part of his success as a captain. They explore this aspect of his personality in a few episodes, most notably Tapestry. So there's really a spectrum of Apollonian to Dionysian, and Kirk is noteworthy for being more Dionysian than other characters in his environment, despite not being the most Dionysian man in the galaxy, and Picard is a very Apollonian man, but he has to be at least a little bit Dionysian to command a starship, as opposed to working in science or medical. In Star Wars, I would hesitate to describe Luke Skywalker as an Apollonian character. I think he's more balanced. Not everybody is going to lean really hard in one direction or the other. We have seen that Luke is capable of being daring, working alone, and acting quick on instinct, especially on the Sand Planet in Return of the Jedi. And some of that might just be the qualities of being a Jedi, rather than, distinctive qualities that he had as a person. Regardless, it does seem like Han Solo is the more Dionysian character compared with Luke. Even though I wouldn't say that Luke is all that Apollonian either. Tumblr Sexy Man is a satirical, kind of tongue-in-cheek name that spawned on Tumblr many years ago in the form of Tumblr users kind of making fun of themselves for their own preferences. Despite it sounding silly, it does capture something real, which is a pattern of traits that captivated people across many different examples and genres, and which I would describe as a sub-archetype of the suave Dionysian. So typically, and I don't think any single one of these traits is necessarily essential, but generally this is the template. Typically a Tumblr sexy man is tall, white, and fancy or well-dressed. He's often a little bit feminine in some ways, especially appearance. He's never too gruff. Bonus points if they have to cross-dress at some point for plot reasons. He's kind of cool and edgy. He can be optimistic, but he shouldn't be too bubbly or cheerful. Bonus points if he's brooding. He should be a little bit morally gray. Not evil, but not a white knight paladin do-gooder either. He should either not really care that much about right and wrong, or he should have a willingness to bend the rules, to work outside the law, to do what it takes to get results. And then also he should be at least a little bit of a lone wolf, meaning even if he is working alongside others, or if he's part of some kind of broader organization or movement, he still has a distinctly independent attitude or approach to things. Some popular examples of this archetype are the Doctors from the Doctor Who series, especially the 10th, Sherlock Holmes from the BBC series, and maybe his brother a little bit too, Kaido Kariba, maybe the Butler from Black Butler. There's a lot of anime characters like this. Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, even more so in the remake. This one is a bit weird, but Jax from The Amazing Digital Circus. Alastor from Has Been Hotel, kind of. There is also a concept of sexy manification, where a certain character has the personality of a Tumblr sexy man but doesn't exactly have the body to fit, so then people give him the body to fit. A good example of this is Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. I don't know what the point of this video is.